Hey folks, this is EJS from Thrivality.com, and I am very excited to have Mr. Gary Greenfield on the podcast today. If the name Greenfield rings a bell, well, it should if you're familiar with Ben Greenfield from Ben Greenfield Fitness. Yes, Gary is Ben's father, and I have worked with Gary over 2 years now on understanding water and water filtration. I've got his products in our house here. We recently added one of his newer models for the whole house filtration. And then we have another product that helps remineralize and vitalize the water as it travels into our home. So we're excited to have him. We basically cover what is water, right? We know it's 2 parts hydrogen and 1 part oxygen, but what does that really mean? It can be in 3 forms. It carries minerals and nutrients into the body. It's claimed to have healing powers in many traditions, and so we talk a little bit about that. We talk about something called terrain theory, which is very interesting, and how germs really can only take advantage of an environment that's not healthy. What role the water has in the body in terms of hydration, transporting nutrients, helping with detoxification, waste, detoxifying waste and toxins, and providing energy, right? To the body, and also information, right? In nature, we are surrounded by sunlight, the forest, the ocean, whatever, and we always feel better. And what role can water have in providing information and sort of a blueprint to the body and how it can be healthy and whole? We talk about some of the challenges of modern water from either utility or groundwater in terms of chloride, fluoride, or chlorine, fluoride, arsenic, heavy metals, and other contaminants in the water. The impact of straight piping on water in terms of its vital force, and how all of this impacts human health. And then we start to talk about filtration, like why it's important, what can filtration remove in terms of like fluoride and chlorine, arsenic, and other things, why some of those are particularly hard. We talked about my installation of one of his latest units. We actually pull a photograph of the installation up, and we kind of walk through, the filtration system, what's in there, and how it works. And then we talk about water structuring. So I have another unit called the CMB that actually remineralizes, re-energizes, and revitalizes the water, and actually how it does it, and all the different media that he has in there. And then we talk about the effects, right? So everything from drinking the water and how you feel, to making coffee or tea, how you feel perhaps after a shower, or even taking a bath in water that's been, removed of its contaminants, but also restructured and revitalized. So we talk about some of the improvements that one might expect from a subjective experience, your energy level, and just how you feel overall. We talk about maintenance, like what's required to maintain these systems, and then we just kind of conclude on where you can find Gary Greenfield, learn more about his products and his company. So hope you really enjoy the podcast, and if you have any questions, just post them in the show notes. Thanks. Bye. Hey folks, before we get to the podcast, if you're interested in learning more about Greenfield Water and their amazing filtration and revitalizing products, check the show notes down below for a link for just 10% off. When I wake up in the morning, I run downstairs, and I have a glass of highly filtered, structured, and remineralized water to start my day right, and it's amazing. Sometimes I put sea salt or a little bit of vitamin C or a hydrogen tablet, but nevertheless, every day without fail, I have a great big glass of water to start my day right. And I'd highly encourage you to learn more about Greenfield Water and their amazing products. Now onto the show. Thanks. All right. Well, hello, everyone. This is EJS from Thrivality.com, and I'm super excited today to have Gary Greenfield on the podcast today to talk about water, water filtration, water remineralization, and revitalization, and its impact on human health. Now, if the Greenfield name sounds familiar, you might know and heard of his son, Ben Greenfield, Ben Greenfield Fitness, who's got a very successful podcast and supplement business called Keon. So, Gary, thanks so much for giving us some time today to be on the podcast.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me, Eric.
Awesome. So just to give the listeners a little bit of a history and background. So in early 2019, I worked with Gary to install one of his products in our house. So that's what we'll call the CMB. And Gary, what does CMB stand for?
So that was it's the CMB quad flow, the ceramic
Yeah.
mineral ball quad flow unit. Yeah, which was an all-in-one compact filtering, energizing, and structuring and mineralizing unit.
Okay, awesome. And then adjacent to that, I also had a whole house unit that I bought from another company, and I was very happy with the results. But then what I began to realize is that the CMB filters needed to be changed a little more frequently as time went on, and I began to suspect that the other unit that I had bought had failed. And so I recently, worked with Gary and installed another unit, which we'll get into. That's kind of the whole house unit, and then the CMB for the remineralization and the restructuring and the revitalization of the water. And I've got some pictures. We can pull those up and talk a little bit about it. But you and I have been working together for a while, so I'm super jazzed to have you on the podcast. So I've got a list of questions prepared here, Gary, and maybe we just take it from the top. I mean, this is kind of a stupid question, but what is water?
Yeah, well, everybody knows water is H2O, of course,
Right.
And but hydrogen is a gas, when it's by itself. Oxygen is a gas when it's by itself. But when you combine these two gases, you get a liquid, which can also become a solid, depending on temperature. So
and then steam, if it's
or steam. That's right. It kind of reminds me of pleomorphism, with microbes, that they're changing according to their environment, and these elements, they change according to their environment. And so even though and so water is very simple but very mysterious as well in how it presents itself, going from a gas to a liquid to a solid to steam. But that's just one facet of this multifaceted resource, that has untold many different attributes to it.
Yeah. I've never heard of the pleomorphism analogy with water, but it's a good one. And just so for the listeners, so pleomorphism is this, and Gary, you can chime in, is this idea that it's called terrain theory. So back in the day, Bechamp and
Pasteur
duked it out, right? And the idea was Pasteur was all about the germ, and Bechamp was all about, the germ can only take advantage of an environment that's conducive for it to grow. In other words, if you throw seed on good ground or fertile ground, it'll grow. If you throw it on, rocks, it might sprout, but it's going to die. And so if germs take root in our body, it's because our terrain is ripe, for the environment. So
yeah, well, actually, all microbes are beneficial. It's and again, it's not about the microbes. See, Pasteur labeled, it's like he labeled them as evil and good. Well, no, that's not true. They're all beneficial. No, oops, let me see, my screen's going. Sorry about that. Every microbe is beneficial, and they all have a function. So when the function is to deal with breaking down matter like fecal matter, then it's not the microbe. The microbe is doing a good job. It's breaking it down. The fecal matter is something that we're not supposed to, it's supposed to have its particular place in the environment. And then when it's outside of that, or, then you get the issues. But the issue is not the microbe, just as Bouchon stated, it's the terrain.
Yeah. This is very fascinating. I don't want to get too far afield here, but it is really fascinating. And I think it segues into how water can help us maintain a healthy environment so we don't have, the bugs coming along. But you're right. I mean, bugs are there to serve a purpose. And if they get out of control in our body, they're there to do something, either clean up toxins or clean up, excess waste and things like that. So it is my own experience has been, it's kind of a balancing act to get the terrain back. So, yes. All right. So waters can be mysterious, right? I mean, many spiritual traditions have talked about water. Jesus talked about water. God, hovered over the water. it carries minerals and nutrients into the body, right? And then we're
Yeah.
70% water. That's the statistic that I've heard often repeated.
Yeah. Although I would say, again, it's the mystery of it all, that we're 100% water and that everything is 100% water. And what I base that on is the scripture in the beginning of time in Genesis, when it said the Lord was hovering over the waters. There was no earth. There was no heaven. It was just water, and the water was dark, void, and still. So it was a mysterious, how could this is water, but yet it's dark, which means you can't see it, which means it's still, there's no activity, which means it's void, there's nothing there. But yet the Lord called it water. And it was out of those waters that he drew all the elements to create the earth and the heavens. So it's a great mystery, but at the same time, and when you look at the periodic table, you see the first element on the periodic table is hydrogen, water. Hydrogen means water in the beginning. It's consistent with what the scriptures teach, water in the beginning. That was the beginning of all life, of all matter. That's where it was drawn from. And so, of course, all the elements of the periodic table are comprised of hydrogen atoms in different configurations and different numbers. And just as we mentioned that hydrogen and oxygen as gases, when they combine, they become a liquid, and then they can even, diversify from there. All of the elements are comprised of hydrogen atoms. And as you change the configuration and the numbers, you change the attributes. So that's why, I go by the premise that everything is really water, 100%.
Interesting. I hadn't really thought about that. So I have to chew on that one. Okay, that's great. I love these little things that I haven't heard before, and they gets my brain going. So, so let's shift here. What role does this mysterious substance, have in the body? Right. I think about hydration, transporting nutrients, detoxifying waste and toxins, and providing energy. But I'd love to get your thoughts.
Yeah. Well, actually, it's really all about the energy. It's like us as human beings. We're a container. What do we contain? Is it, what is it that makes up, that reflects what we look like? Even our physical characteristics, they're fixed, but then they can also kind of vary because of our emotions. What our spirit inside us, what our soul is reflecting. It can make an ugly person beautiful, really, or a beautiful person ugly, but it's not so much it's the physical characteristics that are influenced by the energetics, or that which you can't, you can't wrap your hands around, that energy. So with water, it's all about, it's a physical substance that is carrying other physical components. But it's not so much the physical component is there to carry in the energy, and that is what the primary purpose of all the elements is, the energetic qualities that come from them. And
how would you describe that? Like, when you think of energy, is it millivolts? Is it like, how would you like?
Well, it's like the elements are musical instruments. Each one is a musical instrument. Altogether, they create a symphony or an orchestra, and that can change depending on their configurations, right? What that orchestra or symphony is composed of. But the elements are musical instruments, and as they interact with the environment, or they create music. And what are they interacting with? They're interacting with ether. It was something we don't hear about a lot in science, and at least in modern science. So as they're interacting with this ether, they're creating frequencies. So every element and every configuration of elements has particular frequencies that are emitted. And it's those frequencies that, that benefit the environment. Just as we listen to a symphony, we're benefited by that music.
Yeah. The more I ponder human health, and this is still a little bit mysterious, it's like, when you go for a walk in nature, right, you feel better. When you're on the beach and you're taking in those ions and just, being around nature, you feel better. We are clearly, as humans, drawing information from our environment, right? And I think a
Yes.
lot of the ancestral cultures would say living in these modern houses with all this electrical stress and things like that doesn't exactly help, maintain human health. And so I think when you think about water, I think what you're describing is, the minerals and the content of the water, and the water itself provide information, and energy to the body that we still have a hard time getting our head wrapped around because we can't see it. You pick up your tea or your water, you can kind of taste the difference if you've been around and you've sampled different waters, but it looks like water to me. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So it's providing energy, it's providing information. So what is the blueprint contained in water, and how does that inform the body to optimize its health?
Yeah. Well, there's a researcher, he's from Mexico, Dr. Herrero. He's an ophthalmologist and a researcher, and he's researched water and its effect on the eye, and in doing so, he came up with some theories which discuss the impact of water on the body. And what he found was that as the water goes into the body, there's actually the process of photosynthesis is actually happening in the human body, which means that as the water enters our body, it uses the melanin in our body reacts with sunlight, and it's a transducer. It converts the solar rays that our body absorbs into a different frequency, and that frequency is able to separate or divide the water molecule into hydrogen and oxygen at 98.6 degrees. And for instance, that we do that with a water ionizer too. That's the whole purpose of a water ionizer, right? These ionizing machines, they split the water molecule, but they do it at 2000 degrees. They do it with electricity, of course. And supposedly, you're getting beneficial water from those ionizers, or even from the hydrogen generation machines. Right. Well, the body, these machines just mimic what nature does. So and this is something that isn't taught in science, but I believe it's true. And it's a very beautiful concept that as the water enters our body, the body splits that oxygen and hydrogen. The reason why it was in a liquid form is so that it could be transported into the body, because if it was in a gaseous form, it would just dissipate into the atmosphere, and we could breathe it, which we do, of course, but that has limited benefits. I mean, they have benefits of one type, but when we're able to bring that water into the body in a liquid form, it goes throughout the entire body. Okay, and everywhere we have melanin, it's using a particular frequency to split that hydrogen and oxygen molecule or atom and create a gas. So you have an oxygen gas and a hydrogen gas that is immediately available to every cell in the body because it's everywhere. And that's the most assimilable form is in gaseous state. So you've got the oxygen, which is cleaning the body, sanitizing the body, and you have a hydrogen, which is energizing the cells. And so really, it's not so much glucose. Glucose is carbon-based. That's what gives us our physicality. It's the hydrogen that gives us the energy. And so the body is continuously separating the hydrogen and oxygen molecule and then bringing them back together into a liquid state again, because both states have benefits for the body. And if you had too much hydrogen, we'd burn up. If you have too much oxygen, we would burn up. And so what the body does is keeps a continual balance of going from a liquid to a gaseous state to take care of all the needs of the body. So that's a very vital role that water plays in sustaining life in our bodies, cleaning and feeding, because those are very, those are basically, that's what the cells require. It's continued cleaning from the waste material that's generated from the cellular activities that are sustaining life.
Really good, really helpful. So let's shift gears a little bit here. And what are some of the challenges with modern water? So we've got, I live in Fairfax County, Virginia, and so we've got, utility-based water here, that contains, chlorine and fluoride, and then some of the byproducts, of modern industrializations like arsenic, mercury, heavy metals.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we've got the utility-based water, then we've got well water for people who are not on utility-based water. What are some of the challenges with modern water in terms of contaminants,
Yeah.
how we treat it, how we transport it?
Well, the basic problem is progress, modern technology, all of our so-called advances in science, where we're creating all these new products. And all these new products come, the basic building component for all of them are elements, right? I mean, the elements that's all we have. That's the only building blocks we have for the universe. And all of those elements have benefits in their natural state. But what the modern scientist has done is really become a sorcerer, in that he's taking these natural elements and he's contorting them and corrupting them, and then creating new compounds, and then that's what we call a chemical. And so today,
you're popular.
Yeah, I forgot about all these. Okay, so today what we have are over 80,000 different chemicals. Chemicals are not natural. Every single chemical is a corruption of an elemental form, of an elemental compound, and or it's even a singular corruption of an element. And that's where the problem is. We're messing with nature. We think, I've seen little ditties out there that say nature creates, science perfects. Well, that's a lie, because all modern science has done is corrupted everything on earth, every natural form. So, and of course, and because we're the dominant species on earth, everything is a reflection, everything in our environment is a reflection of our heart condition. And so if we've got all this pride in us that says, oh, we're progressing, we're creating all these amazing technologies, but look around and say, well, what's the fruit of these technologies? Yeah. And the fruit is toxic. We're destroying the earth. And we're being lied to, and we think that this is progress, and that somehow we're going to fix this issue. We're going to recycle, we're going to come up with new technologies, but we never do.
Yeah.
Or if we do, it's just a little, it's a little effort over here. It's like a PR campaign to say, look, we're doing good in the world.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate. I mean, I spent an enormous amount of time thinking about these topics, Gary, and I largely follow, sort of an ancestral based diet, and I do the best with that. And as I study ancestral, like you read about the Europeans meeting the indigenous, Americans, the Indians back in the, I mean, their health was incredibly stout, right? Yeah. I mean, it wasn't perfect. They got sick, they got stomach ache. I mean, but their physique was amazing. And instead of learning from them and how they lived with, nature, and we're in tune with the environment, we just ran them over, and we pay a big price for that. I mean, I appreciate the fact that you and I can connect, and, we do this stuff, right? We've got this amazing thing where we've basically, reading and writing, and we've externalized it in a digital format, and that helps us, build a school of knowledge. But we certainly haven't taken God's wisdom, natural wisdom, and said, okay, if we're going to do X, what are the downstream consequences of it, and how can we, do it inconsistent with nature? And we have gone astray for sure. I mean, my own health journey has been, just because there was just complete disregard for how the body works and how nature,
right.
So I sympathize with that. It's a real problem. I mean, I wish we could take the best of modernity and the best of ancestral and live in harmony. That's kind of one of my missions. It's like, we got to fix this because we're heading in the wrong path. So
yeah.
So how does that impact water? Like, what's like for the average person who's drinking, utility-based water? What are they looking at?
Yeah. Well, what we're drinking is, the outfall of everything we're creating, because water, wherever it travels, it picks up not only the physical components of where it's been, but it also picks up the energetics. And so we're consuming this water, which is just a reflection of our environment, and which is toxic. And of course, it's going to have detrimental effects on our, on everything. And water is just a servant. It's a humble servant. It just does whatever we require it to do, it will do, and it will carry toxins. And if the intent is to depopulate, because and to control, well, that water is going to respond accordingly to the dictates of those that are, in power. And unfortunately, we've got things like fluoride in our water, which we're told time and time again. We've got the prestigious Dental Association, of America, all these educated doctors who say, oh no, fluoride is good for your teeth. Well, there's a lot of convoluted contortions and cover-ups and deceptions and delusions and distractions in that, because what we're dealing with is not fluoride in a natural state. All of the fluoride that goes into water supplies is an industrial waste product from aluminum smeltering plants, from different mining activities. And we're taking a pollutant, a waste material, and we're calling it, something that's health enhancing. And then, so they're taking that and putting that into our water, and it's destroying our brain cells. It's making us sedate, as a human race. And what's the intent there? Why are they doing this? It's not out of, if they really cared, they wouldn't be doing this, but they're doing it because there is an evil, hovering spirit that is directing men who are in positions of power to want more control and to depopulate. And that's what we're dealing with so many of these chemicals that are being put into water. Chlorine, there's better ways to sanitize water than with chlorine. Chlorine is another industrial pollutant. Chlorine is a natural element as well. Fluoride is a natural element, but we're not getting these elements because chlorine is a sanitizer. It's created in our body constantly through salt to sanitize. But we're not dealing with natural products here or in the right concentrations. The whole technology is just screwed up and wrong.
So what are some examples? So chlorine is made in the body through salt. What about fluoride? Where do we get fluoride from nature?
Well, fluoride's present in the soil. In some places it's more than others, just like every element. And trace amounts, there's every element is beneficial, even lead and mercury in there as trace elements. But when we throw that out of balance through mining activities and things like that, then or processing, whatever, then we create an unhealthy environment. So so all of these elements are, you can find them in water in trace amounts. And if they're not in trace amounts, then you have to look at it and say, well, what's going on here?
Yep. All right. So basically modern water, and this applies to well water, it's utility water, because it gets everywhere, right? So water picks it up.
Yes.
Picks up the chlorine, the fluoride, the arsenic, the heavy metals, the mercury, right, from coal-fired plants, things like that. You talked about energetics, and I just want to highlight what I think I understand you're saying, right? So homeopathic remedies are just,
information.
Yeah, they're just information, right? They've been succussed, right? They've been reduced and reduced and reduced. And so you'll look at a homeopathic, bottle, and it might say 30 times. It means it's been succussed or reduced 30 times. So if you were to biologically test, a bottle of homeopathy, you wouldn't find the substance in there. It's the information that's there.
Right.
And I think what Gary's sharing, and I agree with him, is that, water just picks up, stuff from its environment. And so if it's got,
it'll pick up the information, especially when it's vortex, which is actually just putting water into its natural state. It's just better able to pick up. That's just what water does. It picks up the vortex. It's a toroidal vortex will throw it. I can't remember. Anyways, it will throw off information, throw off bad information and pull in beneficial information.
Yeah, and we're going to get into that when we talk about the CMB unit, right? Which vortexes. Okay, all right. So we know we've got problems, and then the other thing too that is I've heard, and I just wanted to see like straight piping, right? So we, from the utility that processes the water to your home, it's in a pipe.
Yeah.
And then, as it comes into the house, it's either PVC or copper piping. Does that cause a problem?
Well, yeah. And the problem occurs even before then, in that we're sucking that water up out of the aquifer through a straight pipe, rather than allowing that water to come to the surface levitationally. As it's coming up to the surface levitationally in a natural state, it's picking up beneficial elements and the energies that are in the soil, in the strata. And then once it comes to the surface, it's then exposed to more vortexing as it goes down a stream or a creek or a river, and so it's mature. But when the water is down in the aquifer, it's not in a mature state yet. But what we do, we bypass that hydrological cycle and we suck it up with a pump through straight pipes and not allowing it to vortex. And then we do the same thing once it's to the surface, then we chemicalize it and then we send it through more straight pipes. So it never has an opportunity to do the vortexing to get mature, to build up strength. It's like a vortex is no different than what you do in exercise. The more perfect the exercise, the more perfect it's a manifestation of the vortexing that's going on.
So how is exercising a vortex?
Yeah. Okay. Well, exercise is movement, right? It's all movement. It's proper movement. If you have improper movement, you'll injure yourself. If you have proper movement, you strengthen, the muscular and the muscular and skeletal structure. And that occurs through every movement, the yin and the yang, or the contraction or the expansion. If it's done in a proper way, it's creating a vortex effect in our body. It's as anything that moves, like you could see a jet plane going through the air, it's going to create vortexes. They followed. You can see them in the, in the moisture, or you can even see it in the growth patterns of all natural, just everything. Yeah, there's that swirl.
The golden proportion.
And so when you're moving through space, through your environment, or moving within your environment in the correct way, you're strengthening, you're actually working on the water. You're energizing the water, because the contractions and the expansions, or the centrifugal forces, or the such a simple term, I forgot it. The centrifugal pulls in, and the what's the opposite of centrifugal?
That's a good question.
It's just like I forgot. Anyways, we're pulling in beneficial information and throwing off bad information. And as you do that, that benefits the protein, because muscle is 99% water. It's 1% protein. That's it. And what is that protein responding to that causes it to strengthen? It's the water, the environment it's in. So if that protein is exposed to beneficial information, beneficial energy, it strengthens. If it's exposed to waste matter and detrimental information, it weakens. So those vortexes are throwing off the bad energy, putting it into the, into the circulatory system, the lymphatic system, so it can be flushed out, or through the, skin. And at the same time, we're pulling in the information from the nutrients that are within our body, which is everything from the oxygen to the hydrogen to the, to all the other elements of the periodic table that, that we get from the food and beverages that we eat and drink. Yeah. So that's what I'm talking about when I talk about exercise and vortexing and how that benefits the body.
That's really interesting. Yeah. One of my good friends, is super fit. I mean, he's a beast of a guy. He has a recovery facility that I did a podcast with him about 40 minutes from here, and he is this incredible athlete, but he had Lyme disease, and he was laying in bed, and then he's like, all right, I'm done with this, and he just started going out and doing wind sprints, even though he just felt terrible. And the exercise really helped him feel better, and and this really talks about terrain theory and getting the energy back into the system, right? And now he keeps those, and he still has the spirochetes, but they're at bay, right? They're sort of contained, and he really performs at a high level. I mean, he's run 100-mile races, it's crazy. So that's interesting. I really appreciate that thought. So basically, just to re-summarize, right? So modern water, it has chemicals, pollutants, fluoride, arsenic, mercury. It's piped, in straight pipes. It's not vortexed. So it really starts to have an impact on human health. And so now let's shift gears and talk about filtration and why it's so important, because we have to correct all the stuff that you've just highlighted as a problem. So recently I just installed your GW7, and then I've kept the CMB and just replaced the cartridges. So let's, obviously I think filtration is obviously important, but is there anything you want to comment on, like why it's important and what it does?
Yeah, sure. Well, filtration will deal with the physical components, the physical components that are contaminants. But when you remove those, you still have the effect of the energetics effects of those components. So that has to be dealt with as well. And that's something that's completely ignored in the water treatment industry.
Right.
And it's no different than if you're toxic, if you're angry, you walk into a room, everybody feels your energy, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Everybody knows it's not, it's ethereal, it's not, yes, it'll reflect in your face, but it's an energy source that just kind of permeates everybody that's in the environment. They pick it up, their meters pick it up.
Yeah.
And when you leave the room, just because you left the room doesn't mean the effects of that anger are still lingering in every single person that was, tuned in, right? So it's the same way. You can remove the toxins from the water, but that information, like with a homeopathic remedy, it's still there. So how do you get rid of that? Well, you get rid of that with the vortexing. So the vortexing is essentially a filter, but it's not a physical filter per se. And so when that water's vortex, it's going to throw off that bad information. At the same time, we're going to capture the contaminants, the physical contaminant. We're going to capture that with the carbon filter, or a particular physical filter.
Yeah.
So and we see that in nature too, because in nature, in the hydrological cycle, you've got the physical filtration of the water coming up through the strata or going down into the strata. That's cleaning it up, but you also have the vortexing. So it's just a reflection of what we see in nature. Except the problem with the water treatment industry, they don't see the big picture. They're just looking at the physical aspects.
Right. Well, let me share my screen, Gary. I think I have, let's gonna share the desktop. Let's just see, I'm having trouble here with my oh gosh, oh man, that's a bummer. It says I have to, it did it. Okay, all right, so I'm trying to get back to, okay, so let me just see if I can share my screen. All right, so can you see my screen, Gary?
Yes, I can.
All right, so what we see on the screen here, folks, is this is the unit that I just installed that Gary sent me. It's called the GW7, right?
Yes.
Okay, and so this is the unit, before the filters went in, right? And I think, how many are in here? 7 filters?
Seven filters, yes.
Yeah, and then here's a photo of it. So 7 filters go inside of this thing, and I think I have a shot. Okay, so here's the filter. So what's in this filter?
Yeah, that's an Aquaman X Filter. It's actually made in America by Ceramic Filter Company in Michigan, and they'll tell us part of what it is. It's a carbon block with zeolite mixed into it, and then but it's proprietary as well. They don't tell us everything that's in there, but it is all natural. And and from my research, I find it to be the best filter on the market as far as what it can do in removing contaminants. It's superior to any other carbon block filter that I know about there.
Awesome. So it's able to remove fluoride.
Arsenic. Well, the one thing it doesn't remove is arsenic. But I do have another filter that does that, but it will remove and at different levels. In the 90+ range, fluoride and nitrates, which are the 2 biggies. Arsenic is also up there, but the nice thing about arsenic is that we can remove that at the drinking water level with I also have a German filter that will deal with the arsenic. But for, your like glyphosate and many of the chlorine byproducts, it's the best filter out there to remove the broadest range of contaminants,
Okay.
which are typically found in all city waters. So it's an ideal filter for city water. It's limited for well water. It depends on what's going on with the well water, but they can get clogged unless we're careful, make sure that we get all the sediment and contaminants, the tannins and stuff out of the well water before we expose it to one of these type of filters, because they can get clogged. That's why they work so well with city water. Is most city waters are free of a lot of particulate issues, but they do have a lot of chemicals in them.
Yeah, that's the one benefit of utility-based waters. It does get rid of a lot of those solids and things like that. Okay, all right. So then this is the 7 filters, and then I had a plumber install it, right? So, super awesome. So it's removing a lot of the byproducts. It's the best that you know of, especially for utility-based water, to remove the contaminants we've sort of highlighted so far.
Yes, yeah, I would consider those to be among the best filters on the market.
Okay, and then how often would someone need to change this?
Well, it's going to depend on water usage, just as with all filter cartridges, or any kind of filtering. Actually, it's based on water usage, but it's also the contaminant removal varies depending on which contaminants are in the water. At the highest level, chlorine's the easiest contaminant to remove, so it removes chlorine. I think it's rated for 95,000 gallons. Fluoride is the most difficult to remove, and to remove at the specified level of plus 90%, I think it's 30,000 gallons.
Okay.
And both of those will, as you increase, as the gallonage increases going through those filters, they're going to diminish. It's not like they just turn off a switch, but it's a gradual diminishment after that. So those are 2 of the contaminants that have been actually certified, as far as what level of certification they've met to remove contaminants. And there's various levels with other contaminants like chloramines, but all those specs are on our website.
Okay. And what's the average household, like two to 3 people household, maybe 2 to 4 people household use on a monthly basis in terms of gallons? Is there a kind of an average figure for that?
Yeah, I think the average would probably be around 100,000 gallons a year. So that's 12 goes into, that's about 8,000 gallons, 2,000 gallons a week is typical. Yeah.
Yeah. So that means then you potentially would need to change these filters 2 to 3 times a year if you really want to keep the fluoride.
Well, what we recommend is, because they are going to be continually filtering throughout the year, but we recommend secondary filtration under the sink with another Aquaman X, which will provide for the year the removal of the more difficult to take out contaminants like fluoride or nitrates. So that way, at the drinking level, we're ensuring up to 100% removal of those contaminants, because that'll kind of, as this one diminishes, the other one will take up the slack that's under the sink. So and what typically what we recommend is a one year replacement.
Okay.
But with, as long as you have the secondary filtration under your sink.
Yeah. So this is an interesting question, Gary. So of the, like fluoride, for example, can fluoride be absorbed in the shower, or is it primarily through oral?
Well, it can be absorbed through the shower, yes. Yes, it can be absorbed through the shower, whereas arsenic is not. Or, and of course, chlorine is absorbed in the shower as well.
It can. So that's why, at least from a drinking water perspective, you suggest the under counter just to catch the last of it. Yeah. So nothing's going to be 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. This is unfortunate. It's just the nature of the beast.
Mm-hmm.
In order to bring our water back to a pristine state, it's costly.
Yeah.
And most people, we recommend once a year, but that's only because most people aren't going to do it, 3 times a year.
Yeah.
It's just too expensive. And so it's the environment we're dealing with. It's like it's like breathing air, that's polluted. We do what we can to avoid it, but or using a cell phone, it has benefits, but we're also shortening our lifespan, by using a cell phone. And yeah, it's just part of our technology. And it's just water is just, it's just something we have to have. And unfortunately, the system, to develop systems that will remove 100% of everything are just too costly for the average consumer.
Yeah.
So we do the best we can. Now another aspect of this, though, is that is the structuring and energizing component.
Yeah,
which
let's talk about that.
Yeah, which I believe, from our experience, and some of this, I haven't, because I'm limited in what I can do with research, but what I have found is that not even that, for instance, I have proven this, that vortexing and energization, information transfer can take out all the contaminants in the water, or it can it can break down all the contaminants back to an elemental level. And it will gas some off, and it will increase some of the particulates or some of the elements in the water. So, and based on that premise and on my research, we're dealing with industrial contaminants in the water. The vortexing, I do believe, and the information transfer will both work to clean, feed, and protect. So those energies and those actions will literally work to break down the elemental compound of fluoride, of sodium fluorosilicate, which is fluoride in the water, and the chlorine and the industrial chlorine products that are in the water.
Yeah,
break them down to an elemental state. So I do believe that because when we combine the structuring and the energizing with the physical filtration, we're diminishing those. To what extent, I've not been able to measure it, but I believe that it is definitely having an impact.
I think you're spot on, because I will tell you, so I had a previous unit here where the GW7 is in the center, and I'm almost positive it was failing, right? Because the CMB unit, which we're going to talk about here in a second, was filling up and needed to be changed much more often. So it went from 12 months to like 8 to 7 months. I would need to change out those filters. But even with just basically the CMB doing all the heavy lifting, my water results, depending on how I ran it, was still in the 92nd or 94th percentile, something like that. So, it's clearly doing something, right?
Yeah. I think it's actually, it's the foundational aspect for water treatment, for improving water. And that's not to diminish filtration at all, physical filtration, but I believe that, if I had a choice, if I can only put one component on my water system to fix it because of limitation of funds or space or whatever, I would do structuring and information transfer first, and then I would choose.
I agree with you. If I had to pick, like if I had to absolutely pick, that CMB would be there for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's shift gears. Let's talk a little bit about that. Right. So, refresh the listener. CMB stands for
ceramic mineral ball.
Okay, perfect. And so there's 2 cartridges inside of there. What are inside of those cartridges, and what does the collective unit do?
Yeah. Well, that's part of the quad flow system. Typically, the quad flow it looks like this system, although it's got 4 flow tubes in it, 4 vortexing flow tubes, and it's got 2 harmonizers in the bottom. So it's combining both of our technologies, vortexing and information transfer. What we did with the CMB quad flow is we took out 2 flow tubes, and we put in its place 2 2x5 by 20 filtering media cartridges. and we fill those up with different filtering media. And it, depending on the application, will change. You know, we can custom make those component, the filtering media. But we use one of the primary components we use is a magnesium ball. It's a German media, and it's magnesium chloride, and that has multiple benefits in that. One, it imparts magnesium to the body as it's absorbed into the water, which is the best way to get that magnesium, of course, is through water. But that also has a filtering component to it as well. And it will enhance the pH of the water. So if you've got acidic water coming into your house, which anybody that uses a salt-based softener will have, then it's going to it's going to extract any metals from its environment because it's hungry. And so we can neutralize that with those magnesium balls and enhance the pH, which of course the body's happy with as well, because if you're drinking acidic water, it's doing the same thing in your body. It's leaching the minerals from your body. Rather than feeding your body, it's taking from your body. So that's not good. And then we also have zeolite in there, which is a very beneficial. It's a negatively charged miracle mineral, really, is what it is. And that also has energetic benefits and also physical filtration benefits to it, and that it can absorb and adsorb contaminants, and it doesn't exchange. It'll exchange a contaminant for potassium, calcium, and magnesium. And then we also, we'll put some carbon in there to capture some of the heavy metals that are precipitated by the magnesium. So that's basically what the components are.
Okay, there's a lot going on there. And are there different configurations of the CMB units? I think mine has the revitalization, the magnesium, the filter, and then you put some bone char in there to deal with some.
Okay, yeah, we'll put bone char in it. And again, that's another, that'll help remove fluoride. That's the primary purpose of the bone char, is to take out fluoride. We want to get we want to deal with that as much as we can physically. So there we've got triple filtration. You've got bone char. You've got actually there's some bone char there's bone char in the Aquaman X filters as well. That's what's dealing with the fluoride. So you've got triple filtration going on with your system to get out that fluoride. So we're giving maximum exposure of the water to that bone char, which is going to help remove as much of that fluoride as possible for as long as a period of time as we can.
Okay, so let's focus on the vortexing and the energetic side of the CMB. So, and it's hard for people to see. I wish we had a different angle to this, but basically the unit the water, you can see here on the screen, it comes in here, it goes down, around, through, and then back up. So it's being vortex. Could you just explain what's going on there and what that's doing?
Yeah, well, we've got the maximum amount of vortexing out of that unit as possible in the shortest space of time, and we've created what's called a toroidal vortex, which means it's a vortex that's giving a left-right turn spin. Vortexing can oftentimes just take place with a left turn or a right turn spin only, just a one-way spin, but we're getting optimal exposure to vortexing with a triangular configuration of multiple rows of glass balls that will provide the vortexing. So that's the vortexing aspect. Then we also have the Harmonizer cartridges in there, which are providing the information transfer. And in those harmonizers, we've got all the elements of the periodic table, all of them are in there, and they're all immersed in a spring water with other mineral components as well. And even though the contents of those harmonizers never have a physical interaction with the water, there's no, they're completely sealed. But what we found is that it's that energetic components that the water picks up. It picks up that information. It's kind of like a hard drive with the computer. The water is the biological computer. The harmonizer is the hard drive. And as the water is passing by that hard drive, it's picking up that information and then carrying it, into the environment. So It's just information. That's it. Nothing else. And it's perpetual because, and that's the other thing, that science really doesn't get into is there is perpetual energy and it's available, within those cartridges. And the reason why it's there is because of ether interacting with the physical entity. And when I say ether, what I mean by that is just go back to the source again. What is ether? Where did it come from? If you go again to the scriptures, there is the revelation of creation is in there. And when the Lord pulled the elements out of the water to create the earth, after he did that, he created light. That was the second activity he was involved in. And he said, let there be light. Well, the light is energy. The energy is ether, and it fills everything. It's everywhere. It's not just the light of the sun is a manifestation of that ether. It's a manifestation, and ether is invisible unless we can't know ether. We can't know energy. We can't know light or information without the presence of a physical component, without the presence of matter. So you can't know matter without energy or ether or light, and you can't know light without matter because they both interact to create, to give us the physical universe as we see it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there, and I've thought and studied ether, and I don't even know where to go with that or what clarifying question to ask. Yeah. I've done a lot.
It's just I'm just giving the basic principle for that harmonizer, for that energy emanating from there, where it comes from and how does it work,
Yeah. Well, ether is what is the backdrop to the universe, I guess is the way I would describe it, right? I mean, everything is infinitely connected, and ether is what facilitates that, correct?
Well, and my perspective may be narrow and limited, and I'm sure it is. I mean, but the perspective I look at of ether is the energetics of it. That creation is composed of two things: light and matter. And I would put ether as in the light, on the light side. And yet ether, and the only reason why we know it's there is because of the presence of the matter.
Yeah. This is we could do a whole podcast on this. I mean, other people call it dark matter. There's 0 point energy. There's a lot of different names that different groups or philosophies or approaches used to it. But I think the gist of it is what it's what underlies the entire universe, and it's the foundation of everything, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Ether and matter.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So now we've filtered the water. We've sent it through the CMB unit. We've structured it. We've remineralized it. So I guess maybe we shift to some of the benefits of that, right? So
yes.
I noticed when we first started working with you, we're in Virginia. It's got a lot of clay, right? And so we would get cleaning the shower was you get a little bit of red in the grout, things like that. You have to scrub it off with some bleach and things like that. But I think it could have huge benefits in terms of drinking water, making coffee or tea or showering and bathing. So let's shift gears and let's what are the downstream benefits of filtered and remineralized and revortexed water?
Yeah, that's a great question. Primarily hydration. When I say that, I mean, or it benefits hydration, or it improves hydration. And the way it does that, it's like sucking milk out of a straw compared to a milkshake. A milkshake is thick and milk is thin. And what we do when we vortex and energize the water, we put the molecular structure of the water into a more informed state, a state of information, kind of like a military formation. It's very, straight. It's not just a chaotic mass.
It's coherent.
And by doing so, that just flows right through the cell membrane. It just effortlessly goes through, just like milk rather than a milkshake, which is thick and you got to suck really hard to get it out of the straw, through the straw. And so what we find is that when you're drinking structured water, the body has more energy to give to other needs. And because it doesn't have to work to get that water in, it doesn't have to work extra hard to get the water through the cell membrane. So that's the biggest benefit. So people will share, well, I have more energy now, from drinking this water. Another thing they'll say is that they don't feel bloated anymore, because that water is just sitting in the stomach, and it takes a long time to assimilate it through the digestive system.
Because the body has to basically expend energy to restructure it, right?
Yeah, because it's got to get that water, it's got to realign the molecules so they can get through the cellular membrane, wherever that's at, whatever the membrane is. And of course, the body's got membranes everywhere. That's what it is. The body's just layer upon layer upon layer upon layer of membranes everywhere. Everything in the body is made of, is a membrane. And so then when that water is in a structured state, it just goes everywhere, just effortlessly. And I believe also that process of photosynthesis, which science doesn't talk about, human photosynthesis, that happens more effortlessly as well. When that water's in its natural state, energized and structured, everything in the body works better, everything. So you can't even, you can come up with hundreds of different benefits, but wherever it goes, it just works better.
Yeah. So better energy, nutrient assimilation.
Yes, nutrient, again, whatever is being carried in that water. And of course, water, anything you eat, if it's in a structured state, like an orange, or a broccoli, it's got water in it, right? The water is what's containing the nutrients. And when that vegetable or meat, which is also, water and protein, when it's grown properly, the contaminants are not there, because the contaminants are like static listening to a radio. It's like it's like annoying, right? You hate to listen to that static, or even an instrument that's out of tune. It's like you got to get away. Well, that's what a contaminant is, but it's not the contaminant itself. It's the music it's putting off. It's like out of tune. It's static. And the body gets these contaminants, says, get them out of here. They're messing. I can't dwell in peace. What's disease? Disease means it's a lack of peace, right?
Yeah.
The cells want to be peaceful. They just want to do their job. And these contaminants just screw everything up. They get, it's like putting, it's like the gears get a stick thrown into them. It's like, get this stuff out of here. So the body has to work extra hard to get all those contaminants out so it can do its job. So if those contaminants are in the water, your body has to expend more energy to deal with those, as it's also trying to, feed the body and protect the body and clean the body. So, you want to get those. So that's why it's so important to eat and drink food that's clean, that's pure, that's been grown properly, that's been processed properly.
That makes total sense, right? So, and so ingesting that water provides the body more energy, the better information. It has to convert less of, poor water, into something that it can use. So that gives you more energy. Let's talk a little about like practical stuff like coffee and tea. Like when I make coffee here, people are like, oh my God, it's amazing.
Well, again, I think what's happening there, it's because the water, the coffee, the beverage is in an informed state. So your taste buds, it's like, boom, it just goes right to them and just blossoms, because it's it assimilates through those taste buds very efficiently. So you can taste this, you can taste all the good stuff. Because again, if the water's not structured, even though you filtered it, you took out the physical contaminants, you still got the bad energy in there, and your taste buds taste the bad energy. And it's like, so it diminishes the beneficial, qualities of the water.
Yeah. This is, I'll go back to your analogy about, walking into a room where somebody's been angry, or where two people have been fighting, right? You pick up that vibration, right? And the same thing, and it's kind of weird to think about, but water does the same thing. It picks it up. If you don't get rid of it, your body drinks it and goes, what was that?
That's exactly what you're dealing with when you say, wow, this coffee tastes great. It's because it's pure. There's no bad energy in it.
Yeah. Okay. And what about like cleaning, shower, bath? I just find I'm not, we don't have as much debris or like residual stuff to clean.
Yeah, well, it's again, for instance, we've had people that were allergic to chlorine, from city water showering in it. Some people are very, very sensitive, others aren't, but eventually, it just depends on the strength of our immune system. And all we did was install a structuring device and their allergy disappeared. So yes, it can definitely enhance the shower. And people will say, wow, this shower just feels good. They can, they just feel better.
Yeah.
Why? Because they're not, even though maybe before they had a filtering system, they were taking out the chlorine, but they weren't vortexing. You still had that energy in there. And people, they'll just say it feels better. I really enjoy taking my shower, because your body, your subconscious knows exactly what's in the water. Our metering systems are just refined. Even though consciously you can't say what concentration level of particular chemicals are in the water, your system knows exactly the concentration levels, and it knows exactly what it has to do to protect against them. Mm-hmm. But if they're not there, it's like, we don't have to deal with that energy now. And so your body so you feel it, it comes out in your emotions. I just feel, I like this water better.
Yeah. So how would someone want to, what would be a good health regimen if they get a filter system like this? Like, what should they do every day? Like, drink a glass of water first thing in the morning, bathe in it regularly? Like, what's the...
Yeah. Well, I think the most important thing is to hydrate first thing in the morning. Drink a tonic, a salt soleil tonic. And when I say salt, I mean sea salt has all the elements of the periodic table in it, right? Mm-hmm. So if you drink that if you drink water that's been completely saturated to its maximum saturation point, which is a soleil, then you're going to be exposed to all the elements of the periodic table. So you give your body a smorgasbord, a buffet of all those elements, so it can just pick and choose what it needs, each morning. And
so basically you take a big glass of water, put some sea salt in it.
Well, no, actually what I do, I take a quart jar, I put about a quarter up, I fill it up a quarter up the way with the sea agrosalt, which is the most highly mineralized sea salt in the world that's been tested. And you can, sea agro is the animal and plant sea mineral, but you can get as for human use, it's the same thing. It's just they bag it up differently. And that's called a Baja Gold sea salt. And they showed the mineral analysis on there of all the major salts that are out there. And the sea agro product is number one. The magnesium content is way sky high. But anyway, so I take that, put it into a quart jar, fill it up with structured water, and overnight it will just absorb. It'll continue to absorb, maximum saturation levels of all the elements in there. And then so I take a tablespoon of that or two, and I put it into a glass of structured water, 16 ounces. But I also put in there a zeolite, which is a natural detoxifier. And there's thousands of research articles on zeolite. And zeolite, what it does, it'll take the contaminant, it does an exchange process. It'll take out the contaminants. It literally sucks them out of the body. And when I say that, I mean, for instance, as that zeolite's going through your body, it doesn't break down. It goes through the digestive.
Is there a particular brand of zeolite that you like?
I use one from a mine, and I use Teague Mineral. It comes, but I can say this: stay away from liquid zeolites. They're bogus. They have nothing to do with the natural process. They turn it into an acid, and they use an acid to break it down. You need to get zeolite in its natural form. It doesn't have to be pharmaceutical grade. That's marketing hype. It just needs to be zeolite, period. You can get the zeolite that they give to animals and plants. It's absolutely
very, very interesting, because there's I won't mention names, but there's years ago I was involved with a company that was a multi-level marketing that sold.
I
drank gallons of the stuff.
Yeah, well, when I buy it by the pound, I get zeolite for 8 cents. I don't even remember what it is now, but when I first started buying it 10 years ago, 8 cents a pound. They'll sell that stuff for, I mean, you can pay as much as $30 a pound, which is ridiculous. And they'll say it's pharmaceutical grade, but it's zeolite in its natural state is pure, because it will absorb, if there happen to be any contaminants in the environment, or in that zeolite, it's like it's locked into its lattice structure, its crystalline lattice structure, and it will not release it until it gets back into the environment where it can interact with solar energies, and then it will release it. But if it's in your body, it's not going to let go of those contaminants if they happen to be there, which they probably aren't.
Okay.
It's going to suck out all the contaminants. So what I'm saying is that it literally reduce tumors. So let's say if it's in your digestive tract, but yet the tumor's in your brain, they'll say, well, you got to get it across the blood barrier so it can flow up there. I don't think that's what that's where you get the misnomer with the liquid zeolite. They're saying, oh, we can bypass, we can cross the blood and the blood barrier, the digestive tract, and get into the blood system so it can circulate up to the brain to break it down. No, that's balderdash. I don't think that has anything to do with it. It's the frequencies. The body gets it. The frequencies from that zeolite, which are very powerful and efficacious, they go out through the whole body, and the body says, okay, we've got a transport system to get the contaminants out of the body, break down those contaminants that are protected within that tumor, which we're trying to protect the rest of the body from, break them down, get them down to the digestive tract so that zeolite can pick them up and get them out of the body. The body is very intelligent. It knows exactly what it's doing. So that's what you're dealing with when we're dealing with zeolite. And that's why liquid zeolite is based on a false science, misunderstanding of how the human body works.
Okay. So what about bait? I've tried a ton of zeolites over the years, and I definitely, it can definitely be helpful. And I can try and debrief with you afterwards of where people can get this stuff. But all right, so bathing in it. What about like taking a bath? And
yeah, well, again, it's ideal. For thousands of years, springs, which have been, they're everywhere in the world, right? But today we have very little access to them, especially in America. They've been shut down because the pharmaceutical companies don't want us to know about the efficacious benefits of water in its natural state, which is which you would have access to in any spring. There's literally, they're healing. It's not just one spring here or there, or what they do with the Lourdes spring, the one in France. That's kind of like a distraction. Springs everywhere are healing. And it's just the natural energies in there. It's the natural elements that are exposed to our body where we don't have the contaminants. It's like a nutrition. We're immersing ourselves in all this nutrition that our body's picking up and using to fix issues. And if it doesn't have the right energy or the right nutrients, it can't fix an issue. And oftentimes people in their normal, living environments, they're not exposed to some of these beneficial energies that come from the spring water. So they go to the spring water, they bathe in it for a day or two or a week or whatever, they make a little vacation, and all of a sudden their what their ailments and their pains are gone, for 6 months or a year. And so they come back again. And that was the standard mode of medical treatment. It's like that was the foundation of medical treatment, and it still is in many old world countries and in different places, or you can find them here and there around America. But people say, oh, we're just going swimming. They don't think about the health benefits.
Yeah, swimming in the
so yeah, but you can mimic that in your own bathtub by, of course, mixing the water, structured, energized water with different minerals or sea salts and things like that.
Yeah. So I got a question for you, Gary. So your unit restructures the water. I know Dr. Pollack talks about easy water or the fourth phase of water. Does your unit put water into that easy water state, or do you? I can tell by your reaction you have a different perspective. So
yeah, I have a different perspective.
Okay.
Water changes for depending on its environment. Water that's in the body is in a different, it's a different composition. I mean, yes, it's got the hydrogen and the oxygen, but it's just it's an environment where it's just a different environment. I'm not even sure how to say that other than water can be found in all different kinds of states. And
so because it's in the body, when it's the body converts it, it gets into this, what Gerald Pollack calls this fourth phase of water.
Yeah. I don't know. I just don't. I think it's more about just if you structure the water, you energize the water, the body's going to
Do what it needs to do.
and that's what you need to do to get the water in its optimal state within the body. Because what I'm hesitating because he's studying water in a lab, and he's not using structured water that he puts into the environment. He's just taking probably an ionized or deionized or reverse osmosis water that doesn't have anything in it, and he's examining how it interacts with different membranes, and everything reacts with everything else wherever it is. And so water, he could observe that in nature, in the human body, but he's observing that in an artificial synthetic environment. He's observing membranes that are synthetic with water that is not in its natural state. So
yeah. So what about, have you ever heard of the Nano V before? I think Ben has one, but it's this device. It's from a company out of Seattle. It's German engineering, and you breathe through a candela, and it's supposed to.
Oh yes.
Easy water and breathe it.
Right. I think what that is doing is creating a frequency that's going into the water that's beneficial. But I haven't looked at that equipment in a long time.
Yeah.
But I think that's what he's doing. They're developing a frequency that goes into the water, and that frequency, of course, it's brought
well, it helps with protein folding and things like that.
Yeah, it's going to have all kinds of benefits. Each frequency, if it's in a natural state, is going to have a different benefit. That frequency is just going to mimic some nutrient. That's
so what about if someone took your water that's been restructured and put it into a nebulizer, right?
Yeah.
And vaporize it?
Oh, absolutely. And whatever you could take structured water, put it into a nebulizer, and put whatever you want into that water. You can create whatever medicinal product you want by just infusing into that water. That's where digital homeopathy comes into play, where you've got companies out there that are downloading. I've got information on our website, infopathy.com, where they literally download the frequency of a particular medicinal product across the internet into your water. You drink the water, and it's as though you just took the medication or the nutrient.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't experimented too much with this, but I get it in principle. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this has been super fascinating. So people basically can bathe in it. They can shower in it. They can nebulize it to get it into the body. I'll just share this story. So my wife came down with a bit of a cold. And I took some of the water, put it in a nebulizer, put in some silver, some coated silver, which is, pretty potent. It's like nanoparticle stuff, right? It's like 20,000 parts per million. It's really intense, with a little bit of thieves, right? Or which is, that essential oil.
Essential oil, right?
Yeah,
right.
and
knocked it right out. Fixed it right up.
Yeah, knocked it right out.
Yeah, you change the environment. That's great.
Yeah. Well, Gary, thanks so much for giving us some time today. This has been super fascinating. I definitely learned a lot today, and I have some things to think about. What are 3 questions I should have asked but didn't?
The only thing that comes to mind is you just mentioned nano. And I would say the whole science of nanoparticles is very dangerous.
Okay.
Because we're taking elements or materials out of their natural state and super duper, breaking them down to this nano level. And I think that's going to have implications when there's certain things that aren't designed to cross the membrane physically. And I think that they can have an impact, very detrimental. I think there's very dangerous science to be dwelling in. I think it's got a lot of very potentially hazardous, fallout from that. So, that doesn't have really anything to do with water, but you just mentioned that.
Yeah. Okay.
Other than that, but it's, I would say basically what I'm doing, I got into water because of reading a book by Victor Schauberger. He's really, he was the prophet in the early 1900s that saw what modernity was going to do to the earth, what modern technologies were going to do, and primarily to water, because water is foundational. It's the foundation for everything. If the water isn't good, nothing is good. Nothing. Everything is affected by water. And he saw what was coming. And when I read his books, I became impassioned to study this and to develop products that could at least, I can't change the course of what's happening. We're in big trouble.
Yep.
But I thought my passion was to create devices that could bring water back to its natural state. I see what I'm doing as a ministry of mercy. It's to help people that are in very difficult circumstances, physically, mentally, emotionally, because it's all affected by our physical, condition. I mean, I want to do all I can to help people in the midst of all this craziness to at least get some health back or some protection. And so that's what's driven me to do what I'm doing. And that's really what it's all about. It's trying to help people survive in the midst of all this craziness, to give them some small amount of blessings that I can give as an individual.
Awesome. Well, Gary, where can people find you online?
On greenfieldwater.com.
Okay. So greenfieldwater.com. And then let's stay on the Zoom after the call. And I got to just talk to you about a discount code and stuff like that. We'll get that set up for folks. But really appreciate your time. You definitely, shared some things that were really interesting and gave me food for thought. And I really appreciate what you're doing. I mean, I really love the system that we've got here. I show it to people when they, if they're interested in it, when they come over to the house. And I definitely have noticed an uptick, in our energy and everything since installing the unit. And I think it's really foundational to, trying to be, my whole passion is to help people be vibrant, vital, and alive. And I really see this as a foundational piece for people to think about and implement as best they can. So, all right, Gary, we'll stay on the line for a minute, but thanks a lot for your time.
Oh, you bet. Thanks. It's a pleasure to be speaking with you.
Yeah. Awesome.